We are back with some breaking economic data.
That's right. Inflation cooled to 4% in May on an annual basis. That is the lowest level in 2 years. On a monthly basis, inflation came in at 0.1%. Well, here to dig a little deeper into these numbers is NBC News business and data reporter Brian Cheung and Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver, our go-tos on a morning like this. Good morning to both of you. Brian, just take us through these numbers. How do they compare to the previous month, cooling to 4%?
Yeah, let's give a little context here. So again, this is a yearly inflation rate that we're talking about here. So prices rose by 4% between May of this year and May of last year. And that's encouraging because that's a slower pace than the 4.9% that we had seen in April, and then much slower than the 9% that we had seen in the summer of last year. Well, that is a weird number that I just drew. But either way, those are the numbers that we're looking at. So inflation coming down, although prices are still rising. Where did we see the price increases or changes over the month? Well, we saw food change by about just 0.2% between April and May. Were monthly figures that we're talking about here. Energy actually declined 3.6% as gasoline prices were very much closely in view over the last month. And then shelter, this is the cost of just putting a roof over your head. Think mortgages and also rent, increasing by 0.6% between April and May. So things like just living and also food remaining more expensive, although we did get some encouraging signs on energy costs declining between those months.
So, Caleb, let's get your reaction to this. We know the goal is down. How down is this?
Yeah. This is down. This is the slowest pace in 2 years. Remember, the Federal Reserve wants inflation close to 2%. We're getting there just very slowly. Very encouraging signs here, especially in that shelter number. The food costs are still high, especially food at home. But meats, poultry, and fish, the things that were so expensive earlier this year, they've come down a lot. It's the breads, the cereals, the bakery. That's costing a lot of money right now. So I would say go carb-free for a little while if you want to save some money. But a very encouraging number here. Getting closer and closer to that 2% number. Fed meets tomorrow. Big decision coming. This just gives them more ammunition to pause on those Fed rate hikes.
Money and diet advice.
I was going to say carb-free. Many benefits
all day long
this month, apparently. All right, Brian, you just did a little bit of this, but can you take us a little bit more in depth on some categories or where we are seeing biggest price changes?
Yeah, well, again, we have to remember that prices are still increasing, albeit at a slower pace now. So where do we see price increases? Things like apparel, personal care, education. The CPI breaks down a lot of these types of categories. But look, in the food category, it's very interesting to see pork and fish decline, as Caleb was just alluding to. And maybe if you can't eat carbs, maybe I would suggest protein perhaps, because egg prices fell, get this, 13.8% just between April and May. That's the largest increase that we've seen in the index since January of 1951. So eggs getting a lot cheaper.
Of course,
is this our medical
eggs were
roundup?
$400 not that long ago. So it's like they had nowhere else to go. So, Caleb, you alluded to the Fed meeting. Of course, the expectation was they're going to take a pause. So what do we think happens this month? And perhaps even down the road, could we maybe not see any more hikes at all?
Yeah, the Fed meets in 1 day, 5 hours, and 18 minutes. I'm not counting, you're counting. But the Fed is likely to pause. We look at something called the Fed Watch tool. 95% probability the Fed will pause here, potentially pause again when it meets later this summer. We might be at what we call the terminal rate, the final rate where the Fed keeps rates high for a while, but they're going to be high for a while. It's not like we're coming right back down the hill here. So get used to high rates and this inflation cooling a little bit, but high on both sides just for a little while longer.
So, Brian, bottom line, for somebody at home, what does this mean for our wallets? Just average American, is relief on the horizon or not? Yeah,
well, again, prices are still rising, and economists say where we really want to be is instead of 4%, somewhere closer to 2%. But to Caleb's point, a lot of people are watching what does this mean for borrowing costs, right? Credit card rates are high. Mortgage rates are more than double where they were compared to during the pandemic. And because the Federal Reserve, even if they stop or skip an interest rate hike, that doesn't mean that they're cutting interest rates. So don't expect to see 3% mortgages anytime soon, although maybe it's possible we've reached the top with rates somewhere around 6.5%. But again, don't necessarily get excited about seeing 3% borrowing costs on homes anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, Caleb, but at what point, what do they take into consideration when they do start to actually cut the interest rates again?
Yeah, they're looking at liquidity. Are banks loaning to one another? Are banks loaning to businesses? We had a lot of tightening there with the bank failures, so they want to see what's going on there. They also want to look at consumer spending. That is 2/3 of our GDP. We got a big number on retail sales this Thursday. Consumers have been spending, even though credit card APRs are high and balances are high. We keep on spending. We're pretty good at it. The Fed's watching that as well.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.